We find ourselves on the threshold of a vast and awesome universe that utterly dwarfs, in time, in space, and in potential, the tidy anthropocentric proscenium of our ancestors. A universe in which every day suns are born and worlds obliterated. We gaze across billions of light years of space. We are right to rejoice in our accomplishments, to be proud that our species has been able to see so far, and to judge our merit, in part, by the very science that has so deflated our pretension. If we understand nature, there is a prospect of controlling it, or at least mitigating the harm it may bring. In this sense, science brought hope. Attempts to propitiate and control, if not much to understand, the disorderly aspect of nature. The scientific revolution permitted us to glimpse an underlying, ordered universe in which there was a literal harmony of the world, that's Johannes Kepler's phrase. If we understand nature,
called a curse in the cradle, loving mother, unstable, daddy gone under the table, but you found a song in your heart. So you learn how to fight, how to starve, how to survive. When the others blocked your light, you learned to see beyond the stars. The curse of small desires, easily acquired. It's time to say
What is going on, traders? Good afternoon. Welcome to the show. How are we feeling today? What's up? Thank you guys for the subs. Let's go. How are we? Wes Wimbo, you are legendary. Fake Pear Bear with the gifted, you are legendary, sir. Saw Gavin. M Stone is in the chat. Welcome, Mel. I'll bring you on very shortly. Jan the Trading Man, the Bastard, J-Licious, Gavin, welcome. How are we doing? Oh, a hype train already. Woo! Let's go, dude. Thank you for the gifted subs. Welcome to the stream. Today we have on screen Mel Stone DarkPool. Alrighty, she's going to be walking through how to read options flow, DarkPool, and her trading strategies that is going to kind of level the playing field for the retail trader. Alrighty, I'm pumped. There's OPT Florida. Hang on, I'm gonna hit OPT with the VIP. Flow Rider. What's up, Colonel? All right, traders. I'm not gonna make you wait any longer. Let's get her on the line. Just gonna pause the music. Bam. I do love that song though. That song does hit a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Let me hop in here. Hello, Mel. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, you know what?
There you go. Hello.
1 second. I need to take off my push to talk so that I'm seamless and not having to keep pushing this button. 1 second.
Okay, no problem. Discord things, you know?
For sure, for sure. So sorry about that. Thank you guys so much for taking your time on a Sunday to join us. I am absolutely honored to be invited to speak to everybody today. Thank you so much, 100, for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone is super excited. I'm super excited. I'm ready to kind of dive into things. So normally we start these off just by, give you a little background on yourself, how you found trading, and what steered you towards using options flow and DarkPool.
For sure. So I have now been trading full time. It's about 4 years. Started about 5 years ago.
Okay.
I always had an interest in it. However, when you kind of did research on trading, at least when I was first looking, so much of it was tied around like the fundamental side, and that just kind of was overwhelming and wasn't ever able to really build a connection with that. So kind of side veered, went off, and of course just live, you learn, you go through different things. And then it just kind of kept coming back to me. And I can't even recall exactly what it was that just triggered it. Probably just, one of those pumps that you had in the market and everybody getting euphoric and excited. But I just really started digging in. And I think the social platforms have really been what has been a game changer for retail. There's just so many that give to the community and just are so kindly sharing, their journeys, how they found stuff, what they found that works for them. And so I think you've lessened that gap when you kind of had to go at it all on your own. So
Yeah.
Everybody, and even I wasn't able to be in real time, but I did get to review your stream on Friday, and what an advantage. So many of us are visual learners.
For sure.
And so as we go through and we're trying to kind of, work through all this ourselves, when you actually can have the hands-on in real time is such a game changer. So you guys, providing the Twitch platform and opening up your stream and your trading style, you're really providing so much value to the community, and especially newer users, because you're going through everything real time. Of course, anybody can cherry pick, right? Oh, well, I knew this was going to happen, but as you're going through it, you're walking through it, and I really like your approach with,
Thank you.
especially with your charting, with, you're showing areas, not just a line, but you're showing that demand, supply, and that's so important. So I just want to, hat tip to you
No,
for
thank
kind of
you.
opening yourself up, because it's invaluable when, especially with the real time
Yeah,
aspect.
that means a lot. Yeah, we kind of treat it more of like a chat room where the group works together rather than just me throwing call outs. And yeah, and then we do the live charting, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I appreciate that.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, so let's get into it a little bit with just start with like options flow basics, what it means, and how we can use that to trade.
Okay, just gonna start just one back step, just
Yep.
one little part. So I kind of had the same story and the same, we all kind of started. I think you had that low float mania there for a
Mm-hmm.
while,
Yep.
and everybody learning technicals, and the technical side. I found that it was just way too overwhelming. Like I was trying to take everything that everybody was using, and when you've got so much congestion on your chart, you have that analysis paralysis, and you're not really even sure what you're supposed to be looking at. And I think what ends up getting missed is price action,
Right.
meaning price and volume, and that's
Okay.
really what led me down this path to kind of try to get a better understanding of price and volume, and through that it was more of more exposure into what really is moving markets, who's really behind moving these markets. You have larger market participants. These are our big guys, right? And
Yeah.
without them, we're we need their interest, and that's where you start to see where stocks that they've got interested in. I'm sure when you've seen Warren Buffett come out with his 13G filings updated every quarter, you have this frenzy and this interest. But through that, that's where my study kind of concentrated, because I wanted to find out who was behind that. So that's kind of what led me down that path. And so I am a money flow trader, meaning I'm trying to assess and review what they're doing in both the options flow as well as dark pool activity. And I think that that gets me as close as I possibly can to any, potential insider trading, quote, if you will, to be able to kind of see what names they're interested in, what sectors are they interested in, to kind of get a better assessment on where I want to be focused, so that I'm aligning myself with who's actually moving markets.
Right. Right. Yeah, kind of following that big money, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's smart money.
So, do you trade off charts as well? Like, I see your dark pool posts. Maybe we can walk through how you do your charting and your like a favorite setup that you keep going back to. Do you want me to share your screen, by the way? I don't know if you're trying to show me
Yeah.
something.
Yep.
Sure.
That would be great. That
Let's
would be
do
great.
that. Okay, so you should see if you click exclusive stream, you should be able to see an option to share.
Okay. There. Ooh.
And then I think you just have to pick which screen that you like.
Okay, just let me make sure I'm on the right.
Yep, no worries.
I think.
Just for chat as well, if any of you have any specific questions, type them out. That's fine. Just make sure you at either me or Mel so that we can see it, because it'll highlight it for us in the chat. That'd be really awesome. So once again, options flow, dark pool, anything that you guys have. OPT, if you want to highlight something as well, I know you're listening. Feel free to type that in the chat and we'll go over it. No, ask in chat, not the Discord. Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Okay, that's not. I'm trying. I've got too many monitors. So 1 second.
Okay.
Let me find. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Okay.
I think, see how this goes. Perfect. Okay, that should.
There we go. Awesome. So you're looking at SEAS, correct?
Yes. Let me take us to a different. Can I start with some money flow first before we
Yeah.
go to setup and what I'm looking for? So, I am a moderator at Black Box Stocks. Black Box Stocks provides not only the dark pool activity that I like to review, as well as options flow. So essentially, I'm being able to see what's being traded in common shares through the dark pool, as well as what is coming through options flow. So one of the names that I'm highly interested in is this TTCF. And just to give you guys a background on what I'm looking at and why I'm looking at, there was no dark pool activity, and that will highlight over here on the right. There was no dark pool activity on Friday. However, there has been historical, and it's actually been pretty notable size. So going to just bounce over here and change this date range so we can kind of assess this a little bit better so you understand why this is unusual
Gotcha.
activity. Okay. So I'm on an intraday screen. I'm actually going to change this to a 1 day and pop this chart out. And what we're seeing here highlighted is here's the historical dark pool activity for TTCF. So this is a name that does not see a lot of activity. So this is Tattoo Chef. It's also one that we know has a high short interest. So seeing some dark pool activity coming in, especially as we're down here at these lower levels, is definitely of interest. And this is what I'm looking for. We don't know the intent of a dark pool. So a dark pool is a private exchange used by larger market participants, and they're able to facilitate larger orders. However, their orders are not going to show up on level two. So level two is going to be your lit market, and that's lit because it means the open order book is public, and you can see where you have larger orders set up on the bid and the ask.
Okay.
Versus a dark pool, which is a private exchange, and what we don't get to see is where there are orders set up, like we get to see on a level two in a lit market. So essentially, you have larger funds working between each other to find buyers or sellers for what they're looking to get filled on. And I know the first thing I usually always hear is, well, for every buyer there's a seller. For every seller there's a buyer.
Right.
Of course, of course. But also what's missed is that it's not often a one-to-one transaction. It's not me like, hey, TCF, or hey, Tattoo Chef, I want to buy 1,000,000 shares. You've got 1,000,000 shares to sell. That's not necessarily how those transactions are always being coordinated. And most often, those are coming in and being filled by multiple orders. And we only get to see that print once it's actually been satisfied. That being
Okay.
said, the intent of a dark pool is to be able to facilitate that transaction, that piece, without disrupting price in the normal market, the normal bid ask spread, the current auction that's going on. But that doesn't mean that they're not regulated, because I know the word dark pool in and of itself sounds ominous, and
Yeah.
kind of how information's being shared makes it seem so much more than it is. But dark pools have been traded, there's been trading in dark pools for years. So this is not anything that's newer. I just think that now there's a little bit more of a retail awareness or
Okay.
presence. So when we talk about that, what's important to know is that they're not they're still very much regulated. They're FINRA regulated. They have to still abide by SEC regulations. Now, while they get to find those buyers and sellers in the private exchange, liquidity is not being pulled from what you and I are seeing on the lit market. So that's going to take us back to that level two, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not coming into where the current auction process is occurring in the open order book on level two to take liquidity from there. This is all occurring on the private exchange. However, that order must still be recorded. So that transaction will be recorded to the time and sales. That is your consolidated tape. So think of that like an accounting record for the underlining, whatever entity is being traded. All volume must still be recorded. So we get to see the information and the transactional details from this dark pool order because it still must come to the tape. It must still be recorded. And so that's going to be what we're seeing over here. So starting on 817, and TTCF had 400,000 shares, which was already unusual. And that's something that our system will do to flag that out. And what that means is this is a name that doesn't see a lot of activity. And one of the first things that I like to do is to go over to FinViz, just because it is a free resource that lets us just quickly kind of assess what activity. I could see multiple things. So I'm able to see the average share size come through, as well as, let me pull this back up over here, as well as what the average volume in. Because let's think about that. When you take a look at Apple, the average traded volume is 76 million shares. A 400,000 share print going into that average volume is really just a drop in the bucket for something as liquid as Apple. Okay.
Right.
Versus TCF. Well, what's this average volume is only 1.7 million shares. So you have a completely different structure comparatively. So when you go and you assess this, this is absolutely unusual. And you have a large portion of the average daily volume in just this one dark pool print. And so it was already interesting to see this activity when it came in 817. And we had another dark pool print the next day, 818, 335 at 1640. But what was really interesting was on 820 when we had 1.5 million share dark pool print at $17. So this was something that was very much of interest to me, knowing that they have a smaller float with only 37 million in the float and 31% short interest. And so, of course, that's going to take me to the chart, because it's one thing to have additional information, but your entries and your exits are always going to be based off of your chart setup. So this was something that I did actually trade, because there was a gap fill. Let me take this off. Okay. I'm actually going to take some of this fib off just so that we're kind of keeping cleaner chart here.
Yeah, no problem. These are reported at end of day or live. What's that in reference to, Bird Kang? Sorry, I missed that when you typed that in.
I can answer that. So you can have dark pool activity come in pre-market, during the day, or end of day.
Gotcha.
And so we'll be able to tell if those are real-time prints when they're coming in, because they'll be trading at the same price when they record to the tape.
Gotcha.
So you can actually see activity pre-market all throughout the day and also end of day. And remember that the official market close is not when we hear the bell at 4 p.m., but the official market does not close until 8 p.m. Eastern time. So you can continue to see activity up until that point as transactions are being recorded to the tape. But now remember, in after-hour sessions, or even at any time, that liquidity is not being pulled from the lit market. So there are times, and I do post a lot of these larger dark pool prints that come in after hours. People go, well, it's just not moving. Like, how could you put that much size in and it not move?
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's already occurred. It's a transaction that, again, that liquidity is being pulled off of the private dark exchange. So they're operating on a different exchange, however, still recording to the tape. And so when you look at something, let's just kind of give a fictitious example, but let's say you have Apple, and the current bid ask spread is $100 by 101. Okay. And then you have a dark pool print that comes in, 3 million shares after hours at, 101.50. That liquidity didn't come off that level too, to where there was where the current auction is. So it's a recording of the transaction. And that's often what's missed. And the biggest misunderstanding is that it's not that they're coming in and they're just, sweeping up the ask, right? Like to get all the orders that are open in that book that you and I as tape readers would be looking at on level 2. It is legit just coming in and saying, SEC requires I record this transaction. So there it is. And it comes into your time and sales. And yes, you will see that. You will see the volume on your chart, once that is recorded, but it's just being recorded. Now, new information is being introduced to the market. So
Right.
now directionally, where everybody else is taking that once they see that larger volume come in is not necessarily providing us the intent uh, of that transaction. I feel like too many people get like more hooked on the is that a buy or a sell? And this is also what I hear.
Okay.
It was a it's a green volume bar. It's a buy. It's a buy. It's a buy. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
First off, total misunderstanding. And think about the psychological effects and how that comes into play, right? That's why you'll see, like, I changed the color of my candles and I like all my volume to be just one color. Um,
Interesting.
the volume is just letting you know the recording of, volume. But let's think about that. The reason your colors change is because you're either going to be one tick above or a tick below where that previous candle on any time frame was. So if you're looking at a 1 minute chart, 1 minute chart on Apple, and you have a red volume bar because that candle closed a tick below, does not mean that every part of that volume was sell action.
Right.
We're in high frequency trading, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I personally, when I assess volume, I like to look at things like, okay, we're breaking out. Are we breaking out on above average volume or less volume? When we pull back, we just ran up. And our pullbacks on lower volume, that could just be a low volume shakeout, constructive price action. So that's personally why I like to just have volume same across the board, because what I'm trying to assess more is, how price action is relative, how we're moving relatively on that volume. So just kind of a side tip, because I know that's one of the most common questions. And I think most people don't understand is that very much having red and green candles creates that psychological effect of where you're going to put yourself with, well, that was just a sell, that was a buy, that was sell. Instead of looking at kind of where your bigger structure is, where you are relative in your time frame, and are your moves being supported, are your up moves being supported by volume, pullbacks are light, then you usually can see some continuation. So it's a better way to kind of look into assess. But so just now, knowing that we've had some dark pool activity, of course, I'm going to the chart because let's think like smart money as well, right? Smart money, what I like to see is here's when we were seeing this activity right here. You can see this big volume.
Yep.
Okay. That's institutional footprint. When you have above average volume, institutions are active.
Okay.
This is not your mama and them. This is not everybody on Twitch following 100 over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
That,
pumping it.
like, this volume, when you see these big, like, what the candles, there are institutions active. But let's look at where this is coming in at when we look relative to this volume, right?
Mhm.
Here we're on a pullback, volume, pullback, volume, pullback, volume. Not so much down here, but we had still in the same area, volume. So we're at an area of support. So just even taking a step back when you start to see some activity coming in, and if you follow me on Twitter, I'm sharing something, go look at that daily chart.
Okay.
Is that at an area of support? Which that would make sense, because that's where support and resistance all comes into play, and those levels, that supply and that demand, is because you actually have people participating in those areas. That is where they want to transact. So it is so important to make sure that you're using your chart as your guide. So this was something that I did take as a trade, because here you've got this this triangle, and we very well respected, but we're getting really close here in this apex. And I'm just going to zoom this in a little bit because there was a gap to fill above. Now we've since filled that gap, but as we've come up here to hit a level of resistance, we pulled back, and then we now may still be looking to find some buyers, and we may also be butting up either here for a pause as we go into resistance, or this could be a time where we actually start to break through, because again, price action is getting really tight in this apex. And how interesting to also know that we've got dark pool activity that's coming in right here. So this is kind of a way to put all of that information together. Additionally, we have seen some options flow coming into this name, most notably. Let me put this back to an intraday chart because I want you to see kind of that impact that options activity has.
Okay.
So you can see. I'm going to try to line this up a little bit better and zoom in. You can see that right. I'm going to line up this one. Let's see here, 12, 24. Again, times that are being shown on my screen are they are central. So just so that there's no discrepancy or anybody knows that may be following along. So here you've got options activity starting to come in, and you see this volume spike coming in. There's activity coming into the 917 $25 calls, and I want you to look at how quickly this moves. Once you start to see options activity, once you start to see sweeping activity come in, when they first hit this, they came in for 24 cents, 22,000 sweeping activity.
Wow.
Okay, so it shows a little bit more aggression. A block is pre-negotiated, and again, we're talking about options. A block is pre-negotiated and filled on one exchange. So that tends to be more of a stock replacement or just something that may not necessarily create like that momentum that we want to see. But when we talk about a sweeper in options flow, we're talking about somebody coming in and sweeping across all exchanges to get filled. There is more aggression and intent. They said, I don't care. I want in, fill me, hit every exchange. They want in. They go from 24 cents. Now let's look at this timestamp. We're 1 minute and 20 seconds later. Those move up to 35 cents. They still want in and they're willing to pay. They come in 1 minute later. Those are now 45 cents. They still want in and willing to pay. And then again, 1 minute later, 50 cents, still willing to pay and sweeping to continue to come in.
Wow.
So I want to kind of just look at this time frame so you can see how quickly this moves. And it also moves that IV. So when we first started to come in, that IV on this strike and expiration was 78, moved all the way up to 95. So it went from 24 cents to 50 cents in a matter of 3 minutes and 12 seconds. 100% return.
Wow. That's insane.
Okay. And it is because this name is also unusual we don't see a lot of options flow in this name.
Right.
Right. So again, it's not like an Apple, you're not going to have those crazy moves because Apple is so liquid, so heavily traded.
Okay.
So when you but this was I've been waiting for this to come in, right? I've already known that there's been a lot of DarkPool activity. I've already had my chart marked up. I've had levels that I wanted to see break. And I wanted to start seeing some participation in the options market. So let's like go back and just kind of recap. So DarkPool activity is a private exchange that's going to be common shares. Now let's look at options flow. Options does not have a backdoor exchange. There is no dark options market. Everything that is going to come through in options is lit. So this is something that not only can retail trade off of, but you also have high frequency algorithms. That's why you'll see price run up. You've got larger institutional buy-side desks using this information. I'm sure you guys have seen or heard of Ponytail Pump, the syndicated CNBC halftime show, unusual options activity.
I actually haven't, but
you haven't?
No.
Okay, so that's okay. That's okay. Pete and John Najarian, they have their little show on CNBC halftime.
Okay.
And they go, we've been seeing unusual options activity coming into blah. Well, now that they're on live TV, that thing gets a spike and a jump because now you're just broadcasting whatever ticker.
Of course.
But that could be something that's already occurred throughout the day that we're getting firsthand knowledge of as it's coming in.
Okay.
So this is kind of just yes, Colonel, like exactly. When they pump your stock, it's like a great IV boost to just sell into.
Thank you.
Oh, I've already been in this for 3 hours. You want my shares? You want my options now? Take them.
Yeah, exactly.
Great time to sell. And by all means, guys, don't go follow that show and start jumping and everything because most of the time it's a ponytail pump because they pump it and then it kind of starts to fade. Most of the time, people have already been in do watch options flow. Yep, up Florida, 20% scalp, in and out, hit it,
Mhm.
quit it, go, move on. So it does give you that option. So it's also just to kind of make sure those that are not really familiar with options flow, or smart money trading or money flow trading, that this is something that's used very much by not only retail, so that we have a little bit of an edge, but also by your high frequency traders, your larger firms. Um, and anybody that's kind of looking for a little bit more insight as to where money flow may be coming from.
Got you.
So I'm gonna kind of just stop there. I know we went through a lot. Are there any initial questions, and we can go through some additional examples, or
Yep, I have
anything
one.
there?
I've got one here from the Bastard Trader. He messaged me and said, walk us through the process when she gets alerted. Let's say Apple gets unusual prints of, let's say, 1 million shares traded, with not knowing whether they're for calls or puts. What are your next steps?
Okay, Apple's a little bit trickier because it's
Right.
more liquid. It's more liquid. It really needs to be size
So let's
for
say it's
Apple.
something else.
Okay. Yep. Let's look at Microsoft,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
Microsoft had a big print. So gonna kind of take you, and Microsoft doesn't see, while Microsoft is very liquid, you don't normally see the same size dark pool wise on Microsoft. So here we go. On Friday, this is 8:47. So again, I am Eastern time. That's 3.11 million shares at 299. And so this came through the tape. What I'm able to do is also see, these are going to be additional areas of support and resistance. And the reason I say that is because we're not able to ascertain the intent. We don't know if this is a buy or a sell. We know that larger market participants are active and at what price they're active at. So this 299 level really gave me a gauge for what I wanted to watch on Friday, as far as if I was looking for an intraday. And you can see initially when this came in, price completely rejected as we pulled back. But this is an area where we were later able to find support. And we want to use these as additional levels of support and resistance, because it's building out volume by price. So going to kind of just sidestep here for those that may not be familiar, and guide you to some additional resources. Stock Charts is an amazing resource. It's free if you go to Chart School. Anything that you have questions about, as far as, how is my MACD? What makes up the MACD? What's making that move, right? Or
Right.
what's the how is that being formulated? What is a cup and handle? What is a bear flag? They go into detail, very well written, but again, a free resource to be able to check on. But something I want to kind of highlight here is volume by price. And that's going to be like your volume shelf, your volume profile. And why that's important is you start to build out a level where you have a concentration of volume at that price. And that is what builds out our areas of support and resistance. So think about that. And I know everybody's heard it, volume by price. Like I trade price action, and that can be so difficult to understand and really break out, like to really get it, especially if you're just starting out. But the reason that's important is because price and volume is leading indicators.
Right.
They're what's making up every part of the lagging indicators that we're using. So whether that be moving averages, MACD crossovers, fibs, everything else first starts with your volume and price. And so those become those larger areas of support and resistance. So this was an area intraday that held as support. We were not able to break back down above that level. But one thing I kind of want to show is where it's not always just the one print that you see coming through intraday. And that is one of the reasons that I definitely do love black box stocks, because they have the volume, the dark pool volume profile. So not only in this light yellow is where we have normal volume profile, but we can see where historical dark pool activity has come into play,
Oh.
and where that's building out larger levels. So I can see when we have so again, a 1 minute chart to show you where that print, but what else has come in? Because another question, how long does a dark pool print stay valid? Well,
Mm-hmm.
forever, because it's building out volume by price. And you can start to see where there's larger levels that are coming in. And as we've came up here with Microsoft, I'm now on a 15-minute chart. As we've come up here and we've pulled back, we're pulling back to a level and trying to hold here as support as we have additional dark pool activity come in. And you can see that this is a larger level of interest because the orange bar is longer, which means we have more volume at that price. And so I'd be looking to be able to hold this level. We've had several touches within this. First resistance overhead would be this 301.77, and then with a move up to 304.07. And then
Gotcha.
we can also go and see not only let's kind of just move through some time frames. We can see that there was a lot more activity down here, and this is again an area where we found support in a larger level with price accepting above. So I do want to just kind of bring that to attention. While 3.1 million shares on Microsoft is notable, that is size, there's been a lot of activity that's already been where price has accepted above at these lower levels.
Okay. Wow. OPT Florida wants would like for you to discuss the Amazon print around ER.
Um, Florida, shoot, which one was that? Let's see here. That was this month, right? Amazon. Okay, I'm gonna go back to historical.
And this is cool to see Black Box too. I've never actually been in here, so if you guys want this, I think Colonel, could you get Mel Stone's link for Black Box and post it in the chat? You can make a command for it too.
I appreciate that. Yes, it's on my Twitter. Florida, do you remember? I know we went the 2.6. What was that? I know we've went over this one when you and I did a session. Sorry, guys, one sec, because this was bigger money flow, and that was, I think, July. Let me go back a little bit further.
And I just want to point out the stock charts website has been posted in the chat as well. So click that, save it to your Discord or your favorites or whatever, and make sure you go through that website. Thank you, Colonel. So you can use that link, guys, to sign up for Black Box. It's going to use Mel's code, get you, I think, 20% off?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. July 26th, he thinks. July 29th, I'm seeing as well.
Okay, wait, here, let me take this off. Okay.
Yeah, open it in one of my 1,000 tabs.
Sorry, Amazon's one that you'll see prints on all the time. You'll see that these are a lot smaller, and that's something interesting to talk about while I'm trying to find this one. Each stock is going to have its own personality, right? So what we're talking about is that these may seem like smaller prints when we're talking about Amazon, a 25,000 share dark pool print, but also cap size for Amazon is so much larger that money flow is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to just kind of highlight. I don't know if this will pull in. So what he's referring back to is Amazon had a 760,000 share dark pool print at 722 on 722 July 22nd, and that was at $3,628. But let's talk about that money flow. 2.7 billion dollars. So this was definitely a huge level to watch on Amazon. Now, I am not a cherry picker. I don't do that. I don't mind sharing examples, but what I don't try to hoodwink anybody and see, guys, see, told you it was that easy. We're talking about Amazon, and holding anything through earnings is risky, but especially Amazon. So this is going to be not to show like, oh, see, told you, we knew, and I don't like that. Um, but we'll just kind of show you it, and kind of wanted to highlight when we talk about money flow, like this is some serious
Yeah.
money flow
Oh
when
yeah.
you're talking about billions of dollars. So let's just take a look here. I'm going to pop this out, and we can kind of see some additional activity.
That's
But
Jeff
again, guys,
Bezos.
yeah. What I don't want people to think is just that, oh, let's just, it's just that easy. And
Right.
holding anything through ER is increased risk, and especially if you're trading a smaller account, you need to build that account. You need to preserve that capital. That's not something you want to be YOLOing ERs. Learn your entries and exits and processes. Don't put yourself to where you're damaging an account just because you're trying to hold through an ER. There's just so much increased risk. But just going to kind of, let's take a look here. So we are up here. So this was before, let me see if I could drop a line right here. So here you had pretty much like, let's just call it right around here. But prior to ER is where you had this print come in. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So there we go. So prior to ER, you did have a larger transaction come in to play. And at that time, I don't think you would have easily been able to ascertain. Again, that was going into ER, so some money flow positioning prior to ER. We did have an extremely huge drop. And I know what everybody was trying to do. I'm going to change this now to a 15 so we could stay a little bit more relevant with price action. But we had this whole area, and this is something that everybody in the in my chat, and as I was trying to share stuff, they were trying to just take this and go with it. This was a larger area, and you could see because of the larger dark pool volume profile that's building out here. I said, just wait for it to either break above, because if you recall, there was so many chomping at the bit to kind of to pick up that this falling knife, right? Essentially, and while we were seeing a lot of dark pool activity, I was just look at your technicals now. Wait for a break above or a break below to position there, especially if you're looking for the longer swing. And we were not able to hold those levels before we broke further downside. And right here at this print, we had another larger one come in. And again, so now we're seeing a little bit more relevant price action because we've already reported ER. We've got Amazon down here at a support area. And there was another bigger print, 280, if I'm not mistaken.
Tom has a quick question as well. He's wondering if using dark pools and unusual options, if that is something useful for beginner trader to start looking into.
I do. I think that money flow gives you advantage because you're staying with stocks that are actually moving. So I personally don't do any scanning. Like I don't look for like Mac. Now, when I'm evaluating a chart, I will, but I don't run scans to find stocks to trade because I feel like I have so much at my disposal with what we're seeing dark pool wise, and options flow. And there are a lot of people that are only options flow traders, meaning they're looking to see what names are going to start seeing options flow come in, because I think one advantage that you have is the market maker on the other side that's taking those orders for options flow.
Right.
They have to buy shares to stay delta neutral. So you
Yes.
start to see volume come in. So let's then go again, thinking as we're walking through and going through. Okay, I've got one for you. I'm going to talk about this one because I know this is something when I was watching your Friday recorded session that you
Okay.
guys were talking about, and I want to add some clarity because I think we're coming into the brink of some really good opportunities. So just going to wrap up here with Amazon. So
Yep.
as we pulled back and we had supply come in, we had another larger dark pool print, 250,000 shares at 32.28. And this is this larger level. Again, as we're coming here, you've got so much supply that's come in, and now we're starting to see some interest. We're able to hold above these levels, and now we're coming back into this range. So this still becomes relevant because price is attracted to where there's larger levels of liquidity to be able to trade. So again, we're playing these as areas that are creating support and resistance, also within the overall bigger structure, technically, that we're seeing on our charts. Okay, so I'm going to go through BBIG.
Yeah, that went crazy.
Yeah, it did, but I want to kind of show you something interesting there. So,
Cool.
so something that I put out on, I put this out on Twitter. It was Tuesday this week, and it was extremely relevant because as we were going through, already leading up to going into this week, already with price action as we were seeing last week, and some dark pool activity, there was a lot more presence starting to step in, either dark pool wise or options flow wise, into names that were high short interest or short squeeze names. And so it's interesting to see this because it was something that kind of came into that was relevant last time we kind of saw some short squeeze names coming through. And what I guess I'm trying to say here is that I think originally when we first had that meme mania, that Wall Street bets, everything was kind of like this retail's dictating everything. And I think it's kind of flipped now, right? I think you've got larger market makers starting to use this information to their own advantage, knowing that they're going to be able to bring retail into some of these names. So we've been seeing some activity. So I think there was already a little bit of appetite and some money flow that was going into some of these names. And just to kind of pull you over here, I did do a video a few days ago
Oh,
on
awesome.
my YouTube that will go into more information on some individual names. So I don't want to say too focused on those, but anybody that was interested, we kind of were trying to highlight that earlier this week. And so going back to BBIG, because we saw this the day before on SRPT. SRPT was moving short squeeze name, but I don't personally think that was anything that Wall Street Bets was pushing or running up. What you had come in was a ton of options activity. And so the next day, as soon as we were seeing BBIG come in, I had even said, I was like, they did this exact same thing to SRPT the day before. Pay attention to this name.
Okay.
And so I'm going to kind of show you what that looks like. We're going to start down here. Again, I'm Central Time. 2 seconds into market open,
Mm-hmm.
they're sweeping BBIG with time, 4/14/2022. 4.5 calls, 60 cents.
Wow.
And they came in again and again and again and again. Um, so just to kind of highlight just this information, just this activity, and so let's talk about how that's a little bit different, right? So here's somebody coming in to uh, strike an expiration with time. These are further dated, right? This is not spec flow trying to flip weeklies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just did not stop coming in. So a lot of the momentum, not only do you have retail interest in the name, I know this has been one that's been pumped before, and trust me, I know, like, everybody's been pumping this name. You got Twitter, bigger Twitter accounts pumping this name, but those didn't really have sustainability. They popped and dropped, and
Yeah.
what's different is, and we see this all the time. I'll see spec flow come into, I'll see speculative flow come into a short interest name, and they're hitting weeklies, right? Like, they're maybe only putting like 40, 50,000. That's not like money
Okay.
flow, right? That's not real big money coming in. So it'll pop and drop, and you'll have some fun with it. Get in, get out, scalp, whatever. But this is different when you're talking about the time that was coming in on these contracts. So not only did we have the 4/14 2022s, and just kind of a side note, those were hit at 60 cents and end of day 165 by 180. Just crazy,
Wow.
because you don't usually see those moves in something so further dated. You just don't usually get that pop.
Right.
like you would on something, I mean, that's pretty interesting for something that long term. You don't usually get that same day return on something with that much time. But let's talk about these 917 350s. So this was 1 minute and 40 seconds after the open. They were hitting the 350s. Now think about this. This is a little bit different. They're in the money,
Right.
right? So these go for 49 cents and they keep coming in, keep coming in. And I think at the end of the day, those were at, well, midday, those were 90 cents. Of course, further into the day, they continue to go. But what I'm trying to kind of denote here is they didn't just come into it just in the morning and hit it like with 6 orders. They didn't stop all day, all day. And we have stuff with time. So we've got going out to January 2023, $5 calls, in January 2022, $4.50 calls. So you've got some positioning that is a little bit more interesting because you don't usually see these low float speculative names going out with so much time. So you do kind of have this interesting dynamic because also think about what's going on right now. We're going into
Right.
the last quarter of the year. Last quarter of the year. Portfolio managers that have been underperforming are trying to catch up,
Okay.
right? So where there's been underperformance, now there's some interest going into some of these names, and you've got some action that has a little bit more time.
Wow.
But if you're not positioned with time and you're shorter dated contracts, we know that can get just chopped up. Take your gains and lock those in.
I was
Always best to lock in green, along the way. But this could be something that has a little bit more legs going into the future.
okay, cool. That was one thing I was gonna ask is like this shows us when to enter plays. When do you like to exit plays and take profits?
Okay, that's gonna be completely personal. And
Sure.
the bigger factor being, what kind of contracts are you in, and do you even have time?
Right.
Because you're not gonna be able to trade options, especially short dated, like you would be able to common shares, where you can have a little bit more flexibility because you don't have that time element.
Okay.
So I think it's extremely prudent, especially with doing weeklies, that you are locking in those gains, protect that profit. That's the whole name of the game.
Yeah.
We're not trying to hit those home runs, and that's great to see that people took something and went from that percent to that percent. But don't compare yourself to other people. I mean, and I love it. Like 100, you're like 100 to a million. Like you don't get there by just YOLOing shit,
Yeah.
right? Like
Exactly.
you've got to build that account, and you're trying to just stay in the game.
Yeah.
Um, now, uh, on larger contracts, you can see when they're exiting in options flow. So you'll see. I didn't even think of getting an example on here. Let me see if Square was one of them. Friday. No, Square had put writing. So put writing is bullish put activity. So it means they're writing those contracts to collect premium. So while you see that there's put activity, which we would automatically assume that's downside,
Right.
you're also able to see when they're writing. So you can have bullish put activity. They're writing these contracts to collect premium. We don't. So that's actually extremely bullish. And I have an example. Or did I? We get off this one. I had an example on. Um, let's go to XBI. I think this is definitely another sector that has not necessarily performed very well, but we had bullish put writing come right into here. So again, like I don't try to call bottoms. I don't try to call tops. Like that's not. I'm just. It's not my personality. I'm not trying to be. But money flow comes into play, and we had some bullish put activity come into the XBI. That was on August 28th. We had about 1.5 million in bullish put writing that was right here. And that was on the 18th. Um, see if I could pull that in because I do. There we go. Is that showing? Maybe not. I know there's a little bit of a delay. But we had XBI, which has been one of the underperforming ETFs. That's our bio ETF, right? So we're definitely seeing a lot more movement coming through to the bios. I'm going to be quite honest; it's not my space. I'm not very versed, and I don't follow a lot of the pipelines, so definitely not one of my specialties. But just to kind of give you an example, we had the 1016 120 puts being written. Now that's bullish. They're collecting premium. And from that day, we moved 15 points up. So in like a little bit more than a week, you had a 15-point move in an ETF.
Right.
So definitely keeping your eye on some bio names, if that's your trading style,
Cool.
because I think we've got that being one that has underperformed that we may start to see more interest in as we go into the rest of the year.
Okay. Um, I'd love to see you walk us through one trade that you took this week, if you want to do that, and kind of like what made you take it and your charting on it.
TTCF was one I was in. Let me go back to show some of the activity. I jumped in when they started hitting. I think I took a starter position before after seeing that dark pool activity. And then there was also some. Oh, I've got one. Let's do Skin, SKIN. Another name that did not have does not see a lot of dark pool activity. However, we started seeing some and Opflow. We went over Opflow, and I did a video as well. And this was one of the names that we were talking about. Just a name that you don't see much in. This is kind of a newer. This is more of your growth stock name, and you can see here it's a newer chart, right? And so we've got this basing. We've moved up, and there was right here was when we were having activity come in. And I need to backtrack to show I was able to get in before they started coming through with the options. So I was able to get a little bit of a bump um, on those, and it was right here. Now, this is not going to show your timestamp. Um, sorry, it's not going to show your timestamp because we're reviewing historical,
Right.
but it was on 826. So let me just kind of show a different angle so that you can see. Um, this has been one I'm watching. I think this is going to be similar to that Docs, DOCS, to where
Okay.
this one has a smaller share structure. It has a smaller share structure. So it tends to be able to move, quicker. This is one that they were already had been active in about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And one thing I was just trying to make note of is were we holding above these larger dark pool prints or were we coming down and finding support here? And we were able to hold above. And so, from a charting perspective, I liked this. So we popped up. This is originally when they started hitting it hard with options. It got a CNBC mention. Mr. Wonderful was in it. Also got called out with unusual options flow. And then here you can see this is still a very constructive pullback. So a really good example when we look at that volume, right? So
Right.
this volume right here, volume is increasing on this move up. And then when we pull back, we're pulling back on lower volume. And that's so a really good example of how I like to kind of assess from a volume perspective. So I was looking here for this technical break, which we did come back up and accepted above this resistance level. And this is the day we went right up to this fib level. So I mean, everything's still respected technically. It just I get to have a little bit more insight on what names are actually in play for that day, actually moving. And we did on this day came right up here to this fib level and kind of pulled back. But this is still a name that I think is possibly just getting started. I think there's a lot of potential here.
Awesome.
And so let's kind of, this is something I've found that not many people um realize. So individually, when you look at, let me actually show you this TTCF because there's a few things to talk about here. When you look at, okay, here's your float. 37 million in the float. And the reason that these are such high flyers is because there's not a lot of shares available, right? So when we start to look at what's available to churn, 37 million shares is not that much. And so these growth stocks tend to have those bigger moves, right? And then you add short interest on it.
Yeah.
That's when you get these unbelievable, like, what the fuck just happened moves while you're sitting on Apple trying to get 50 cents
Yeah.
intraday,
Right.
and you're going, this thing just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But think about that. Think about that float structure. So let's take this like a little bit further. You've got 37, million in the float, but this stock kind of has something different for it going, right? Sales quarter over quarter, 47%. This is like a growing company. They increased EPS quarter over quarter. And I don't do a whole bunch of fundamental stuff, but that's something I do look at. Like, are they increasing in sales, especially for longer swing trades, right? So here you have a company that has solid quarter over quarter growth, solid EPS return, and still for some reason is this heavily shorted when you really do have more of a technically sound, like fundamentally and technically interesting company that has growth potential. And so when you look at share your stocks like this, there's less to churn. So let's talk about that. When you have 37 million float and you just had dark pool activity come in, absorbing some of those shares, think about that stock going into strong hands. That is diamond hands.
Yeah.
That they're not going to give up that float. They're not going to give up their shares. And so let's say we just had, 3 million. Now you've taken shares in the float from 37 million now down to 34. And as people start to get more interested and they're looking to hold on to shares, you have less to churn. And when you have less to churn is when you get moves like Wayfair that went 30 to 400 because
Right.
people are not giving up those shares and you don't have much. And so that price discovery and that price acceleration moves so much quicker. So, I mean, I think when trying to look at some of these plays that, should we be going up onto a short squeeze, looking at some names that kind of have a little bit more substance there could give you a little bit more longevity opposed to some that may be just more those pump and dumps.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah. Opflow saying LRCX. I think that was a little bit ago.
Yeah, LRCX had options flow. That was earlier this week too.
Okay.
They came in. LRCX is one of those names that when it sees options flow, it just moves. It's similar to Sono,
Interesting.
SONO. When you have options flow come in, it just responds. Lulu is another one. And so that's time in the seat. I'm essentially, this is kind of my way to read tape. I don't really, you know, do level two and time and sales on individual tickers, but I can get kind of a good feel for what's going on. And I'm looking for not just the individual names, but in general, what's going on. So let's take a look at this. Another one I'm sure most of you guys have heard of, Rocket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So let me get off history here and just isolate us to, am I on?
This is also a really great lesson on black box for you guys.
Yeah, I just want to show the data. I don't want to just come and just talk.
Yeah,
talk about
100%.
it. Well, there was cool stuff happening, and I know some people, are a see it to believe it kind of thing. But
Yeah.
let's go into, for some reason. Oh, here we go. Let me go over here. Wrong tab. All right, so let's kind of talk about this. And Rocket, don't get me wrong. This thing will see spec activity every week. They'll come in and hit it into weeklies. They'll go a nice 25, 30-cent pop, and then it'll fade. So this is very much one of those that I know tends to have a little bit more of a speculative nature. We know that it has, that smaller float. But let's kind of look at something that was a little bit different that caught my eye was we have put writing into the $9, $17, $16 puts. So again, they're pretty much positioning themselves to say price isn't going to go there. I'm writing premium, right? They don't want to be upside down on these. Now, not much money flow, but interesting that they're going out to next month to the 917s instead of just like the weeklies. And then here we go. Also look at 917 and we've got some activity into the $22 call. So they came in 12 cents, 15 cents, 17 cents, 19 cents, and 20 cents. So those have almost returned even there 100%. It would just even that little bit of activity, right? So as they've continued to sweep in, contract price going up, and they continued to pay. We did have some dark pool activity come in. Actually, am I on history? Yeah, let me show current. We did have a little activity come in on 236, but what I kind of want to 236,000 shares, and that's like interesting, not necessarily much for that name, but the daily setup is kind of showing a little bit more activity. So you can see here that there has been notable interest all through here. So again, as you've had supply come in, you now have an area where you have interest coming through. And this is definitely a larger level. Now, this is going to be at that $20 level. So if we can break through there, I think we could easily get up to this 20 to 50, another larger level. But technically, you do have an interesting um, setup here. So let me kind of zoom out a little bit. I was playing with this one before we got on. So
Mm-hmm.
we are holding this level as support. So as we've come down, um, at these lower levels, this is an area where we have bounced. And so you kind of see we're channeling upward here, but I kind of wanted to denote this divergence with MACD. So even here, as we've come down, when we come back to retest, we're higher up here. So that's a positive divergence with MACD to the upside. And you kind of have this little bit of a channel here, but then bigger. We've got this break of this downtrend line. We broke out. We've come back and retested it. So I like that retest is held. That's actually very constructive. So I think there's a potential to get back up here to this point of control, volume point of control. That's going to be a little bit over that $20 level. So one I'll be watching next week. Another one with a higher short interest, that tends to kind of squeeze when you get that momentum.
Okay, cool. That looks great. I think I'm echoing.
You sound good to me.
Okay, cool. How can you tell when the puts are bullish? Are they seen on the bid or ask? That's from AT in chat.
Okay, so for an example, so let's think about that. There's going to be two type of scenarios, right? Go to. And this is something that a lot of platforms won't show you. They won't show you bid side activity because it can be confusing, especially for newer people, but we're going to show two scenarios here. Okay. We're going to show put writing. Now, yellow in our system means that this transaction exceeded open interest. In this single transaction, it exceeded open interest. So let me just kind of pull these numbers up so it gives you guys a little bit more relevancy to understand that. 1 second. Okay. So the 917 $16 puts have an open interest of 188. So this order with 708,000 shares exceeded open interest. So let's talk about that. Puts on the bid, but we've exceeded open interest. You can't close what is not there. Correct?
Yeah.
Again, we only have 188 contracts in open interest. So you can't close something if it's not there. So this is an example where they're writing, and another reason is because the price is going backwards. So here you can see at 10:04, $16 puts, bid side at 16 cents. They came in less than a minute later. Those are now 15 cents. And then again, about 30 minutes later, and they're now 11 cents. So this activity is not something that you'd like to follow. And that's actually something that we talk about in the room a lot as far as our playbook, because options comes at you hard and fast. We're looking for specific items. We're not trying to just pick one line, right? We're looking for those opportunities where you have same strike, same expiration, and that contract price keeps going up because it's essentially telling you that they're still interested and they're willing to pay up and still pay up and still pay up because they still want to be like they're chasing themselves, right?
Right.
Still interested in being in the name. So we're not just going and looking at one single line item goes, I don't know. We're looking for that flurry of information that's going to really bring a lot of momentum into that name, which usually also brings in more of that volume. So you get the those bigger moves that can come through. So it creates the opportunity for day trade, but also when you have millions coming into something, that is definitely eye catching. And I'll go over an example of that in just 1 second. So Rocket, this is an example of writing because they are writing those contracts. That's going to be bullish put activity. And versus here where they're closing. So the 827 1850s bid side, this means this was an existing contract because it's white, it didn't exceed OI. Now, just to kind of visually give you an example, of course it was 827. Of course they're going to be closing out contracts because they expire the same day. So I want to make sure that's said, that that's not anything that you would have followed, but just
Right.
for a visual, because I don't have another example with me right now off the top of my head. But let's talk about some, like, when you're talking about size, time, and urgency is something we like to focus on this C's. So C's, Sea World, not a name that you see that much options flow come into. So when we talk about that, we're talking about those names that just are like maybe just here and there, like you just don't normally see it, or you see like ER flow. Like the only time you ever see something in that name is, them positioning ahead of ER, which it's a ER speculative flow. Like not worried about that. But this is interesting because you've got the 10-8 $51 calls. They've already reported. They don't report again until November 4th. So this is something that's not even going to cover that next ER, right?
Right.
And OpFlow, I know you're all over this one. So let's talk about what we're seeing here. So yellow is letting us know this is exceeding open interest. So we're going into the $51 calls for October 8th. They came in paying 289. They still came in paid up 294, came in again paying 307, came in again 310, 319, 330. And you'll see that there's actually a single. So while we've had some smaller activity, decent sized money flow still, 94,000, 138,000,
Yeah, yeah.
209, 89,000. When we get up here, we've got a 1.04 million block. So at this point, we have close to 2 million going into a name. And if you go and look at that option chain for C's, you'll see that this is very much not a name that sees much activity. So now you've got kind of this higher concentration. And what's interesting is why 10-8?
Right.
Like when you think of options flow and something you'll start to note, you'll see those monthlies, right? So we
Yep.
just finished the 820, you'll see the 917, you'll see the 1020, whatever the 10 one is, but it's not 10-8, right? Like it's that third Friday is where you're going to usually see more of that positioning. So interesting to kind of have it. Well, interesting date, decent size. Who knows what could potentially be up with this one if there's insider information, maybe a upgrade, who knows? But regardless, um, you know, somebody's coming in and somebody's like, get me in. Get me the fuck in this one, the 10-850 ones
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So this
Right.
is a different perspective to kind of show you some of that bigger money flow. We've got some size, we've got some time, and some urgency. And by urgency, they're sweeping, and they went from 289 all the way up to 330. So all of this happening again within about a 14-minute time span, 15-minute time span, and they continue to still want it.
Wow. I do have two more topics to cover.
Mhm.
Opflow brought up one of them. He said to maybe explain how newer traders should read SPY and the other index ETFs since they're tricky to read.
Well, one thing is the activity that comes into the major ETFs and the major indices, you'll see that will show this SP20. SP stands for signature print. This is activity that comes in delayed. So the transactions, they're given up to 24 hours, and you most often see this on the major indices. So your SPY, Q, IWM, DIA. And this is building out again larger levels. So the activity is actually something that has transacted the night before and then gets recorded to the tape today. And that will be recorded all throughout the day, and the common denominator is going to be the price. So you may not always see the same share size, but one thing that will be and stay relevant is the 446.29. So like how all of these have come through. That means that we had 21 signature prints come through today. Now that's delayed recording. So you can see even as these started coming in the morning, SPY was over here at 447 and they continued to print and we weren't even in that pricing range. So that would take us to kind of a larger time frame. I want you to kind of see where these bigger levels come into play. Uh, and again, price is attracted to areas where it can trade those larger levels of liquidity. And so we want to kind of be, and that's up or down, right? So you can see where this is an area where this was an existing dark pool print here, and we came down, and this is an area where we found support. And this is the major way that we use it, is just looking and denoting those larger levels of liquidity, just so that we can make sure that those are holding as areas of support or resistance. But again, a little bit more detail. I actually had a video about a week ago. These last two videos actually start with this third one, SPY. Here, I can try to grab this link. I go into a lot more detail on signature prints, and that's more isolated if you wanted more information on just that one.
Awesome. When day trading or scalping, is it best to pick in the money, near the money, out of the money, or far out of the money? That's from Big Will in chat.
I prefer
Depends, right?
to stay. I prefer to stay at the money. So I don't necessarily look to go in the money, but I'll stay at the money. I think you really run the risk, especially if you are in weeklies, going too far out of
Right.
the money. Um, Again, that's going to be kind of, your personal and what you're, um, are you buying at an area? Are you trying to just do a quick scalp? I still think at the money, you still can let that move a little bit. Um, but my personal preference is not really in the money, it's just more at the money or one strike above.
Okay, cool. One more for weeklies, I'd say in the money for sure. Okay, cool. The last kind of topic that I have, and then we can take some quick questions and kind of wrap things up, is so what few pieces of advice or, a few pieces of resources would you recommend for someone brand new to this, trading options, a small account? Obviously, options are the best way to grow a small account, but nobody really knows how to play them correctly when they start. What are some great tips for beginners that you'd say to, here's the place where you can start?
I really think, and I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows, Investopedia is so important. So first off, you want to understand, like, especially starting up, there's so many new terminologies. You're going to hear ITM, OTM. Go here and search it to make sure you understand. And what you're really going to find is this is so loaded with just such information. And it's like Alice falling down the rabbit hole. As you go through here, you'll go,
Right.
oh, what is a dark pool? This is great. ATS, what the is that? Okay, so now you're hitting to another link and trying to find out something else. And you're like, okay, but it's through that process that you start to learn.
Right.
You individually start to learn and you start to better understand. So you've got to have a foundation. You've got to have a foundation first, because the last thing you want to do is just go jumping to something you're not fully aware of and fully understanding. Take advantage of again, I can't go back and say enough good things about. I am so proud of the overall fintech community. I think we're kind of starting to drift a little bit more away from that flashy, like I'm the best. I won. This is my gains.
Yeah.
This is my gains. So where more people are sharing charts with setups, so you can kind of start to visually train your eye, finding a good group that's going to support. And again, 100, I cannot enough, like the visualization and the walkthrough and the guide through is so important, because that's something that's repeatable, right? Like
Yeah.
you're seeing those setups, and that's something that you can go, oh, well, when I see that next time, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark my areas of supply, demand. Is it respecting a trend line? Do we break trend? Where do I think this will go next? And going through those motions, because the last thing that you'd really want to do, jumping into options, because you do not have time on your side, is not know how to trade a chart, because you're
Exactly.
entering your entries and your exits are going to be based off those support and resistance levels on your charts. So, and take those small gains. Perfect. Like, right, you're trying to go 100 to a million, but
Mhm.
you didn't just take $100 to get you to a million. You got to get that 100 to 150, and that 150 to
Exactly.
two, and then two
Yeah.
to 230, and still be able to keep uh, yourself in the game. So uh, take those smaller gains, and really reinforce that discipline one, and reinforce the technical setups that you're seeing to go along with what you're looking to trade, and respect those.
Awesome. That's really great. I love that. If anyone else has any questions in the chat, feel free to post them now. Otherwise, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We've been going for just over an hour. Once again, thank you for coming on. I really, really appreciate that. I'm going to have to rewatch this video like 18 times. There's so much knowledge in this. Oh, my goodness. And it's free. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and and guys, like, I'd love to have you become a part of the Black Box community as well. But if you're just starting out, just follow me on Twitter and just start to look at some of the stuff I'm posting, because you've got to realize, even through like the DarkPool feed, we'll see about like 900 line items a day. I'm very selective, and I've been in the seat for a long time, that I'm trying to highlight stuff that is actually unusual. Like, interesting, you never see something in this name. I'm not just trying to load my feed up with just something just to say relevant. So through 900 line items a day, I'm really selective about what I'm trying to share, because like, I want you guys to go back to those charts and kind of see where those are areas, that's actually okay, interesting. She never posts this one. Okay, I want to pay. Let me mark up my chart. And that's a lot of what it is. It's complementary to our technical trading, because we're getting firsthand additional information and additional data, that's coming, into the market. So then we get to kind of be a little bit more prepared, get our areas, and our alerts set up, and let that trade just come to us.
Yeah, 100%. Mel's Twitter's up on screen, guys. If you guys want to hit her with the follow, Melstone31. Colonel, you could link that too if you'd like.
And thank you, everybody that's helping in the chat. It really does help. I see a lot of people sharing the links and everything else, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, we have a great community here, and anytime you want to drop in the stream and say hello, that'd be awesome. I did give you VIP as well, so you have a pink diamond by your name now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if nobody else has any questions, I think we're pretty safe to wrap things up. Anything you want to end with or plug? The floor is yours.
I appreciate, like I said, everybody, taking the time, and look, respect your own trading process. What works for me and how I interpret the markets is what works for me. Just something worth sharing, some additional information. What I do doesn't make it right. And that's something that I have so much respect for. Like, I don't try to I just try to be respectful for anybody, because there are so many ways to trade this market. There's no one right way to do it. The right way is what works for you and how you're personally able to make that money. And so if you have your own way, this may not be useful to you, because you've got a process that works. So don't stay respectful, of everybody's different trading styles. I think that's really important. And just kind of continue to learn, continue to grow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your knowledge today and for joining us. It was a lot of fun. I think everyone's got a full notepad now. So
yes. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Mel, for coming on. I appreciate it. We'll have you on again. This is really, really great. I got to think of some more questions now, and we'll have you on for part 2 in the future.
Okay. Well, I'll try to jump on over if I see anything kind of happening or any theme setting up in the week. As we go into next week, I'll try to hop over and see if I can share some stuff in real time as it comes in.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So just a little bit of background on the room. Everyone with a VIP, the diamond status, they're experienced traders. So when you guys are posting, everyone in the chat will see, oh, okay, there's a diamond person is posting, which just means, right. Intermediate to experienced. So your post will be highlighted. But yeah, thank you for joining and coming on and teaching everybody today. I appreciate it. This is a blast, and we'll do it again soon.
Wonderful. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
You as well. See you Monday. All right, traders, how was that? So here is Mel Stone's Twitter, melstone31. I'm going to put the music back on, and we'll start to close out. Thank you guys for joining us today on a Sunday. That's how you know we're going to make it, because it's Sunday, and we're still studying. You know what I mean? So here, let me throw on some my new favorite song. All right, put Mel Stone's Twitter up. Hit her with the follow, guys. She posts all her DarkPool activity on her feed for your live trading. Yeah. You just joined? That's too bad. This will be available to rewatch, by the way. The video will be under videos on my Twitch tab. If you go to my channel under videos, and I will be posting this to YouTube as well. No, you don't have a diamond. Here, let me give you one. And there's the her Twitter link right there. Hit her up with the follows. Thank you guys for joining me today. This was awesome, and I'm excited to kill it on Monday now. You aren't even subbed. Trader Evil's getting called out. All right, I'm going to start to wrap things up. I think we will raid Justine Griffin. She's live. She's a great musician that I like to watch. Thank you for the subs. Let's go! And we'll wrap things up. All right, traders. I love and appreciate every single one of you. And I stream every single day. I'll be back full-time next week, actually, because I'm on nights. Thank you, OPT, for joining us as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one. 100 out.
Just werewolves tossing dollar bills in the wine dark sea of Malibu. The curse of small desires, easily acquired. It's time to set your gasoline heart on fire. Kill your demons, kill 'em dead. In your mirror, in your bed, in your heart, in your head. Don't you look good in bed? Slay your devils, kill 'em all. Take your throne, paint the walls. And if you make it out alive, hold that bloody head up high. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save you. Swing that sword that you made with the pain that they gave you. Like pain is gonna save you. Kill your demons, kill 'em dead. In your mirror, in your bed, in your heart, in your head. Don't you look good in bed? Slay your devils, kill 'em all. Take your throne, paint the walls. And if you make it out alive, hold that bloody head up high.
Welcome to the quick post show. I'm gonna hop out, traders, and I'll see you guys Monday for live trading, 12 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Don't want to miss it. And yeah, we're gonna raid Justine Griffin. If you guys are interested in some live music, she's quite talented. I'll be sticking around for that. Hope you guys learned something today. I think this was really, really good. I learned actually a ton, and the way she explained stuff was just amazing. Like, kind of like, I don't know. You know what I mean? See you Monday. Thanks again, 100. Thank you, Release God. Thank you, Surf Dog. And especially you, Colonel. I'll watch it like 10 times over and over. Yes, sir. It'll be live on our videos immediately. And then I will put it on the YouTube channel.
Once I was a man with good intentions, and some people at home he forgot to mention.
Thanks, Hunter. Nice job. I know some here don't know me yet. No, yeah, you're new to the room. You got to stop in the live day trading streams. All right, we got 6 seconds. We're going to raid Justine. I'll see you guys later. 100 out.